Hey tea heads, this is Don from Mayleaf. Underneath this towel is a tea type which I've been asked to source for many, many years, and I've always said I really like that type of tea. It is in my collection, but I haven't felt that there's been anything that has been out of the ordinary. It's consistent, it's a nice, tasty tea type, but nothing that really springs out and says to me, this needs to be on the Mayleaf shelves as part of our collection of pinnacle teas. Until, of course, we found this tea. And so here it is, revealing our first fuzhuan brick of Mayleaf history. This is hunting for pralines or hunting for pralines, depending on how you like to pronounce that word. I will stick with pralines because that's what comes most naturally for me. Take a look at the cover artwork by Celine. Kind of crazy, kind of out there, very abstract. This is a new tea type for us, so we can go off piste a little bit and do different styles. We sort of set ourselves little rules, not that we stick to them necessarily hard and fast and always will stay with them, but generally we use animals for our pu'er cakes, and we have other areas like Simple Dreams for our whites and Jade Star for that abstract quality for the white teas. If you don't know about our tea series, then you can go discover more as you hunt around. But this is the first of its kind, so this is the first fuzhuan brick, and so we've gone a little bit out there with the cover, or Celine has, this strange, trippy, weird, spirally road, two-color with the hands pulling apart reality and revealing this speckled, doppled sort of wave formation underneath, the sort of wave particle duality of reality, finding their way underneath the sort of everyday routine of driving around and driving to work, and this sort of supernatural, these supernatural hands, or maybe it's your own hands because you're supernatural. You can interpret it however you want. It's open. That's the whole point of these covers, for your interpretation. Let's dive into the tea while you admire the cover. This is a fuzhuan brick, which we'll talk about in terms of the type and the style and the processing in a little bit. I'll quickly scope the tea though. This is from May 2019, from wild tea trees growing in Hunan area. So this is spring 2019. Cultivar is the Chuntijong, which basically means the original heirloom varieties of that area. As I said, these are wild tea trees growing around Yiyang in Hunan in China. This is a Hunan fu brick. The elevation, or picking and processing, I'll talk about in a little bit, but the elevation is around 800 meters. So what is a fu brick or fuzhuan brick? Fu brick is a type of tea which is very old, been very well established as a border tea. It's been a tea which has been traded up into the higher mountains of Mongolia and Tibet. It is a very classic dark tea from Hunan. Dark tea, aka heicha, aka ripe tea. So if you've had ripened pu'er tea, the dark fermented pu'er tea, that's also a heicha or a ripened tea. You might have tried our liu bao teas. That's also a fermented tea or a heicha or a dark tea from Guangxi area. This is from Hunan, and in Hunan they have a variety of different dark teas, but the ones that are compressed into these bricks are called fu bricks or fuzhuan tea, and these are usually pressed in actually big 1 kilo packages. This actually is, just to remind myself, 480 grams. So it's basically half a brick. So we've taken the bricks and cut them in half. So it's probably nearer to 500, but we just thought we'd, count for a bit of wastage and be a little bit conservative. So it's 480 grams, but when we weigh it, it'll probably be a little bit more. Let's talk about the processing, because it's very different from ripened pu'er tea, which is the more commonly found heicha or ripened tea on the market in modern days. But of course, the heicha technique for making ripe pu'er is actually very young. It started in the 1970s, borrowed from other provinces like Hunan and like Guangxi, where they've had an established dark tea production for many, many years previously, hundreds of years previous to that. So actually, pu'er tea or Hunan is a bit late in the game to create these fermented teas, starting probably only about 50 years ago, but they now have become the most popular style or the most commonly found style on the market. But fuzhuan is very traditional. The processing on it is they picked these wild tea leaves, springtime, and there's different grades of picking, but it's usually medium grade. You don't want it to be too young. The leaf, it doesn't ferment that well, and it's not very commonly found on the market. You want there to be a mix of leaves, including some stems, which we'll talk about a bit later, because you want to have some air in the brick for improved fermentation. So they pick these leaves and then they bring them to basically make a green tea. So they wok fire the tea. So they use big woks, heated at high temperature, but not necessarily as high as with green tea. And the baking process isn't done as thoroughly as with green tea. So similar to pu'er tea, there's some level of activity of enzymes still going on in these leaves after the wok firing process, but it goes through the wok firing process to essentially fix most of the tea, fix most of the color of the tea, and make a green tea. And then, key difference here compared to pu'er tea, it goes straight into the wodoi process, where they pile the leaves up, and the residual moisture in the leaves allows for fermentation, and they only do the wodoi process for one night. Right? If you compare this to the pu'er production techniques, in pu'er production, they will fire the leaves by baking. They'll then usually roll the leaves and they'll put them out in the sun to dry, and then they'll store them, and then they will then go through a fermentation phase later on in the year, and that can take many weeks up to a month. So a long fermentation process. Here, for the loose leaf, what they're doing is they're baking, and then the residual heat, they'll roll the leaf and then they'll pile them up, and that residual heat and that residual moisture in the leaf will mean that it ferments, but only for one night, only until the leaves start to change color and they go yellow brown instead of staying green. And also, I was told that you're looking, and when you hold the leaf up, you want to see some transparency through the light as well, apparently. So there are techniques to understand the level of fermentation, but basically it's a very, very short fermentation phase. Then those leaves are sun-dried, again, under the sun, very important. Builds up aromatic compounds because of the full spectrum sunlight, but also allows for a gentle drying process, not something that is industrial or goes through ovens where you're going to deactivate a lot of the activity, the life in the leaves. Then the leaves are pressed into these bricks, into 1 kilo bricks, and then they are then fermented a second time. So the bricks are then stored in hot, 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, and humid, about 95% humidity rooms. So hot and humid rooms, and they are allowed to ferment for 6 months. So there's the difference, right? You have compared to pu'er tea, you've got a very short wodoi, but then a very extended long brick fermentation phase, compared to pu'er, where you've got a drying of the leaf and then a longer, say 3 weeks to a month, wodoi process where it's fermented loose. So that's one key difference, but there are many other differences. Now, there are some controversies around this tea. One of the hallmarks of phu bricks is something called golden flower spores. So if you break into a tea, you should see some golden flower spores. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my opinion about those spores a little bit later. But basically, this is a sort of healthy and tasty and considered to be very desirable mold that develops during the fermentation phase. And most sellers will tell you that if a phu brick doesn't have any golden spores in, then it's not a good quality phu brick. And so there is, in some productions, the tendency to inoculate the leaves with these golden spores. And the way that they do that is through using wheat. So they will put some wheat flour with the leaves inoculated with these spores. Now that means that the tea is not suitable for people that are highly allergic to wheat, it's like celiacs. It's just a practice which is done to accelerate, to really amp up the growth of these golden spores. As I said, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my opinion on that. Obviously, I prefer for the golden spores to form naturally, and I'll tell you why. It's not necessarily just because of the fact that I don't want wheat to be added to the tea, but there are other reasons. The point is that by fermenting these tea leaves in bricks properly for 6 months, you should develop those golden spores naturally. So after the bricks have been fermented for 6 months, they are then ready to be sold to market, but they will, just like all of these teas, continue to age, continue to develop through oxidation and fermentation. Right, have I said enough? I think that you understand the process. Now, they are traditionally in these bricks, 480 grams. It's not the easiest thing to prise apart neatly, but I will try. So sort of using the puer pick like a letter opener here. And you can see what it looks like inside. Well, let me open it first. Right, can you see that? Can you see that? There you go. There's your food bricks. Now, when they press it into bricks, this is what I was talking about stems, they want to allow enough air for these golden spores to develop. If you press it too tightly, you will not get that golden spore development. And so that's one of the key parts of this process. Now, normally what I would do with this is I wouldn't take the whole thing out. I'd be breaking directly from here, right? Because it's nicer then I can fold it up and store it away. However, I'm conscious of the fact that you probably want to see the brick. So I'm gonna try, but probably fail. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to do that. I'm gonna have to rip the paper in order to get these out. So let me find the join and try to do it semi-neatly, which is not going to be possible. So I'm just doing this for you. This is not what I would recommend, because I would normally keep it there and just break into it. And as you break into it, it'll start to prise itself out so you can remove it more easily. But I want you to see the beauty of the brick. Here we go. This is our Hunting for Pralines 2019 Wild Fuzhuan Foo Brick. You can see the layers, you can see the compression. It's going to be tight, but it's not going to be extremely tight. Now I'm going to break in here, and we're going to be talking about golden spores, because you can see some in here. I tell you what I'll do. I'll break in a bit. Again, not something I would normally do, but we can do it. Now, you can see here some golden spores. I don't know if you can zoom in to it, or if I can zoom into it on the edit, but there are golden spores in here. Yeah, here as well. I will show you, I'll do one more. And I want to be very, very clear about something, because I know what's going on in some people's heads, because I've been around this tea game for too long. There are golden spores in there. However, I have seen food bricks, and I have food bricks in my collection with so many more golden spores. And if you look online, you will see people say things like, the amount of golden spores represents the quality of the food brick. This is where I'm going to be a bit contrarian to common belief, or at least contrarian to the message which is often spoken about by producers as well in Hunan. There is a reason why I haven't selected food bricks for 20 odd years of me sourcing. And that reason is because I find that the taste of food bricks tend to be all very similar. Nice, but similar. And that similarity comes from an over exaggeration of the taste of these golden spores. So the taste of these golden spores is honeyed and sweet and mellow, all lovely, lovely adjectives, right? But I find that in many food bricks, in the majority of food bricks that I have purchased for myself or that I've tasted, this dominates the tea. And I feel like this obsession with the amount of golden spores is number one, leading to techniques like this wheat inoculation, which is not very desirable, but also not desirable just because of the fact that they're adding things to the tea, but because it just makes too much of that golden spore taste. And I like that golden spore taste. You can see more golden spores here. I like that golden spore taste, but I think that the tea should shine out and not that golden flower taste. And that golden flower taste is very specific. And some people buy food bricks because they just want that taste. And if that's the case, then there are many, many food bricks out there that will have tons and tons of golden spores. So I'm saying it very clearly. This, compared with a lot of food bricks, will not have a huge amount of golden spores, but I think that it's for the better for it because of the fact that you're not having that dominating taste that I find to be a bit overbearing and just make a very uniform tasting tea for all food bricks. And I recognize that that's a controversial position to take because it goes against pretty much everything you'll read online, but that's my 2 cents worth. Take it, leave it, do what you want with it. Right, so let's put a fair chunk so you can see the leaves here, medium leaves, and some stems in here, as you'd expect. I'm going to put 5 grams in, 5.3 grams in, and we will give it a taste. I've got a new pot here, haven't given it a name yet, but it is a beauty, an absolute beauty. Check it out. I don't think that this camera does it justice. It's beautiful. Everyone is made separately, so all of this drippy glaze is different on each one. A small amount of these pots are available if you are interested. I love it. There are many of these sort of drippy glaze things around. Sometimes they just look chintzy and tacky, but when you get this sort of beautiful enameled quality to it, and it's just so sensitively done. Look at the lid where you've got, you know, part of it unglazed and then glazed. It just works so well with this pot. Could not resist. All right, let's get these leaves into this pot. See how I'm doing it. I think that's about right. Now you can brew this by boiling it. That's a very traditional way of doing it. I'll probably do another video about boiling this tea. For the moment, we're going to be brewing gong fu style. Put this all away, tidy up the big mess. And here we go. Sweet, but fortified. Strong on the nose, but mellow. I am going to be talking with a comparison to more common food bricks out there. Okay, so you know you'll hear me talking about that comparison. The difference, I smell the tea more, which is always a good thing. I don't know if you can see it, maybe. Anyway, you've seen the leaves. So I'm getting dark rum, leather, brown sugar, poppy seeds, poppy seed pastries, hazelnuts. But yeah, loads of rum and leather. So yes, I can smell the tea more. Well, the tea is giving off those notes. When I smell a food brick that has a lot of the golden spores, I get a very distinct honeyed note, which is again very nice, but I find that it may dominate in some teas. Right, let's give this a rinse. And we will give the little duckling first taste. Right. Oh yeah, you see, I'm in the forest. I get acorn, I get moss. I get, yeah, those leathers, really distinct leather note. And I'm getting those poppy seed bagli in Hungary, or maybe Eastern Europe. The rum is distinctly there, slightly alcoholic note there as well, but like a dark rum. Some licorice, but lots of those nuts. And we'll talk about why we called it hunting for pralines in a little bit. But yeah, lots of those nuts. The poppy seeds, the hazelnuts, a little touch of almond essence. So like, you know, just very concentrated almond note. The dark rum is there. Brazil nuts. There's a little bit of the betel nut as well, which is a classic flavor note for Liu Bao tea. So it's got this bracing foresty note, but as if you've taken the essence of forest, like the nuts, the acorns, the moss, the woods, the leathers, which I'll sort of throw in as a sort of foresty kind of note. And then you add brown sugar, licorice, dark rum, and like, yeah, poppy seed, baked goods, desserts. And like a clay and plasticine quality to it as well. It's just got those terroir elements, those complex tea food notes, non-food notes, etc., all in there. It's buzzy, it's interesting. Again, if I compare that to food bricks that I have on the shelf that I really enjoy as sort of simple, easy sippers, there's a little bit too much of a honeyed note as a pronounced sort of feature, and I feel like I'm missing a lot of this. Now, as I said before, these are wild tea trees, so you're going to get more terroir expression as well. Right, let's brew these up. It's the first time really that I'm using the production line of this pot. So I did get a sample in, but yeah, I really, really love them. All right, I'm drinking in my jade craquelure. I put this beautiful slab of tea here. So there's a lot of tea. Fuzhuan bricks are usually very, very affordable. I haven't priced this up yet because it's wild, because of the, you know, the nature of the sort of, you know, processing with no inoculation with wheat, etc. I think that, you know, it's probably going to be edging a little bit more expensive than your average food brick, but I hope that it's still going to be a very affordable tea compared with pu'er teas, even though all teas are affordable if you actually look at the amount of tea you're getting out of the leaves, and the enjoyment, of course, is unpriceable, right? Oof. A little bit of mandarin coming out, like mandarin juice, mandarin zest. There's a top note, a citrus top note in there as well. Cheers, everybody. Texture is medium. It's not super thick. Food bricks very rarely are. It's medium. It's oily. It's soft. It's already giving me a little physicality on the back of my tongue, so it's immediately physical. Always a good sign. Taste is this lovely combination of warm brioche, warm hazelnuts, and the reason why it's called Hunting for Pralines is that when we were tasting this food brick, we found that it was this beautiful, sweet, delicious, complex tea, and there were these little praline notes. And when I talk about pralines, I'm talking about like pralinade nuts, so nuts that are candied, that have like toffee or brown sugar, like, you know, pecan pralines, etc., like, you know, pralines and cream ice cream, those pecans, that sort of brown sugar, cooked sugar and nut note that was popping in and out. And it was just like, oh, look at that praline note just keeps on coming in and out, especially towards the end. And it was like we were hunting for those pralines. And so that's where the name came from. As a sort of, we liked the name, and then the cover came out of there. Which has got nothing to do with pralines, but, this sort of hunting. Anyway, it's all abstract. So brioche, candied nuts, pralines, hazelnuts, leather, and then goji berries, carrot juice, like a mandarin marmalade. Without the bitterness, mandarin jam, mandarin jelly. That clay and plasticine quality, like a pottery room, is there as well. And the finish is amazing. It like gets absorbed, it's soft and gets absorbed. It gives me this tingly, fizzy, juicy, it's making my mouth produce a lot of saliva, and that has a sort of physical tingly effect underneath my tongue. And it's just a very juicy finish, but like really flooding juiciness coming through without much dryness. Normally it's dry to juicy. This has hardly any dryness, but it's very, very juicy. Juicy tea. All right, let's give it a second. Oh, so good. And not much of that excessive honeyed note there. Yes, it's there. I can taste the honeyness in it, but it's not overtaking the tea experience. I can already feel the comments. I can imagine the comments saying, you just bought a tea with no spores and trying to make it out like that's a good thing. Spores are always great in food bricks. I can hear them. I can see them being typed out. Go ahead, type away. This is my view and my opinion. You have yours. That's the beauty of tea, right? We all have our own opinions about it. Here we go. A little whiskey note coming through. But like a light, I don't know much about whiskey. Is it Speyside whiskey? I don't know. And that mandarin note is there as well. Like a zestiness. It's almost like it has been mixed already with some orange peel or mandarin peel. Oh, it's so drinkable. It's just such a, and that's one of the things that I was determined is like food brick should always be a very drinkable, ripe tea. It's one of the teas which a lot of people who try, maybe they try ripe puers and they find it a bit too dark and a bit too dank. Food bricks tend to be quite accessible because of this honeyed nature of the golden flower spores, but also because just generally they're smooth and rounded and warm and have this gentler quality to them. This is so drinkable, and that juicy edge to that juicy ending is definitely makes it very, very accessible. A touch of ladies' fingers. The fingers that you use to make tiramisu, those biscuit fingers with the sugared top. Sort of simple, and in a way, and I mean this in the best way possible, in a way because of their dried nature, a little bit cardboardy. It has like sort of like, it's sweet, it's bready, but in a little bit more of a dried expression of that. And those little pops of candied hazelnuts, candied Brazil nuts, candied pecans, the pralines just pop, and then they get replaced by this zesty mandarin quality. Delightful, super easy sipping. I'm going to go away and drink another 5-6 infusions, and I'll be back with my final thoughts and body sensation. This is my 10th infusion. I can't stop drinking this tea. It truly is one of those amazing easy sippers. Now, all Fubricks should be warm, gentle, easy sippers, but this one is like got all of that, but then the character that comes from tasting those wild tea trees. 60-year-old tea trees, I read on the back, I forgot to say, 60-year-old tea trees grown around the 1950s. So these rich heirloom tea trees with a lot of character, and again, not dominated by that golden flower spore, not excessive amounts of it. So there is honeyed notes in it, but not excessive. So you've got something that's very easy drinking, so accessible, and yet rich in character. And that's exactly what I wanted for our first Fubrick, which is why I held back buying the teas that I've been offered in the past, even though I've got a fair few in my collection, because, you know, I still like the more standard ones. Flavor profile, consistent. Lots of those leathers, rums, foresty notes, lots of those praline notes. The smell of the empty Gondabe, sweet, honeyed, coconut sugar, some of that orange goji berries, orange curacao is in there. I noted what I was tasting. Like it's orangey, it's citrusy, but with that rounded alcoholic note like curacao. So, I mean, it's such a delight to drink in terms of the taste in the mouth. It's such a delight in terms of its juicy, soft, juicy physicality. It's so quaffable. It's so drinkable. You literally could break off a chunk and then just go through the day. Obviously, if I boiled it, which is another method for making these kinds of borderland teas, then it's going to have a slightly different flavor profile or expression. I will do a video about that at some point. But you can see the color of it is just still this beautiful amber whiskey color, and it will go for many, many infusions. Body sensation on this is really fascinating. At the beginning, it starts off to be something that you think, this is just going to be gentle warmth, right? It feels like a hot water bottle around your stomach, gurgling with pleasure. You know, it's warm, it's comforting, it's settling. You feel like, this is making me feel like connected with my body. You feel that flow going through you, and it feels very, very warm and settling. But then you start to get this very reviving quality to it. It starts to become refreshing, reviving in the mind. And as you get past infusion number 7, number 8, that starts to move a little bit into what is being represented here, although that wasn't really the sort of aim of this. But, you know, you start to get a little bit, certainly this sort of ripping apart the fabric of your day-to-day and just sort of having an altered sense of the world, or an altered sense of reality, or a glimpse into just a little bit more of a trippier environment, or a little bit more spacey environment. But again, all very accessible. It doesn't send you off in any sort of extreme way like some teas can. We love them, but they also a little bit like, can be a bit like, oh, I wouldn't touch that tea right now. This is the kind of tea, well, it definitely is awakening. I definitely wouldn't necessarily recommend it as a late night tea, but the expression of the cha-chi, the body sensation, the energy is still all very accessible. I don't think that there would be anybody that wouldn't want this feeling. It is spacey and a little bit out there, but nothing extreme. And at its heart, it's an extremely gentle giant of a tea. That giant coming out of the fabric of reality is gentle. It feels very settling and warming, even if it is a bit spacey and trippy. An amazing tea, a tea which has been a long time coming, as I've said, and I think a worthy star to add to our collection. Hunting for pralines. I hope that you get a chance to taste this tea. As I said, maybe in the future I will buy in more Fubricks that are a little bit more standard, with the more sort of golden flower predominance of flavor. But since you're buying 500-gram bricks, I think it's better that we sourced at least one that was a little bit different. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts. Hopefully not too controversial, but whatever. Share them in the comments below. That's it, tea heads. Check out our other videos. Taste our teas wherever you are in the world by browsing mayleaf.com, and come visit us if you're ever in London. Other than that, I'm Don from Mayleaf. Thank you for being part of the revelation of true tea. Stay away from those tea bags. Keep drinking the sublime stuff and spread the word, because nobody deserves bad tea. Bye.